Many people have convinced themselves that egalitarianism is a problem in the world. It is a problem for them. They believe that it is a problem for them. They believe that individuals being treated fairly is a problem. They believe that when others have what they have, then it's a problem, or when others have access to whatever they might have access to, and they believe that it is a problem. And so the satisfaction of others translates in their minds to them being dissatisfied. Now, some individuals couch this in terms of feminism versus egalitarianism. We're going to talk about what feminism is and what egalitarianism is. And we're going to address this dynamic of many individuals blaming egalitarianism or feminism for all of the problems that they have in the world, for the reasons why they cannot have happy, healthy, and well adjusted relationships, and for many people, why they cannot be a full woman or why they cannot be a full man. Now, a great deal of this is couched in religious terms. And it's not just one particular religion. There are a number of religions that are founded upon the disdain of certain groups of people, founded upon some people not being treated well while other people are elevated. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to look at this construct of feminism and this construct of egalitarianism so that people have a better understanding of the historical foundations for these particular constructs. In this discussion, we're not going to go into the dynamics of self-esteem and identity, but what we are going to address is this dynamic of ego theism that seems to be undergirding some of this blame of feminism for all of the problems in the world, or blaming egalitarianism for all of the problems in the world, because there are many individuals who identify specifically with the biblical narrative related to Adam and Eve. And this biblical narrative related to Adam and Eve sometimes results in individuals sort of appropriating those identities and putting them on themselves and then sort of running with it. And so, in some instances, individuals, particularly if they identify with Adam, for instance, the particular individual known as Adam. If they identify with that individual, it might cause an inflated false self esteem as they see themselves as being made in the image of God. And that, of course, we've talked about before, comes from individuals not actually even reading the scripture, but they take that story and they run with it. And then their self esteem is bolstered based upon this identification with Adam, and it has nothing to do with their true self esteem based upon who they actually are. And so it's based upon this biblical character versus the current reality of whatever their existence happens to be. And so we're just going to, again, just look at what feminism is all about in terms of the foundation so that you have a clear understanding. Everybody gets a clear understanding of what the foundation happens to be, because many people are running sort of an agenda, again, yet another psychological operation, in order to push these narratives related to feminism or egalitarianism being the root of all of the world's problems. And so let's look at it, and then you can make a decision for yourself about what is really going on. We are not going into any deep philosophies about feminism or any deep feminist philosophies. We are just dealing with the basic understanding of what feminism happens to be. And we're going to use Britannica for this. And so it indicates here, feminism is the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. And so in order to understand this, it's important to understand what social equality is, what economic equality is, and what political equality happens to be. It goes on to indicate, although largely originating in the West, feminism is manifested worldwide and is represented by various institutions committed to activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. Some people take this to believe that the rights of women and the interests of women are put above the interests and the rights of men. But feminism, in and of itself, is a responsive or reactionary process. And so it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It comes about, and it has come about based upon inequality. And so a refusal to give women rights, a refusal to recognize the interest of females. And this starts with little girls. So this isn't just about women. This is about girls. This is about babies. And so the idea, the original idea behind feminism, and it's very old, the idea is that women, girls, babies are humans. And so, therefore, all humans should be treated in a just manner. It's really interesting when you hear individuals talk about females, girls, women, children being treated in a just manner. Sometimes they believe that this translates to males, boys, men being treated in an unjust manner. But let's look at the history of feminism so that we can get a better understanding of the history as it relates to females. And then you can see what feminism was originally all about. And so it was in response to these dynamics and an attempt to change many of these dynamics. And so it goes on to indicate throughout most of Western history, women were confined to the domestic sphere, while public life was reserved for men. In medieval Europe, women were denied the right to own property, to study, or to participate in public life. And so, in essence, what they are saying is that women were treated as what is known as chattel. They were treated as property. Now, some individuals are asserting that this is not true. And what that indicates is a lack of awareness of history or a denial of history. It goes on to indicate at the end of the 19th century in France, they were still compelled to cover their heads in public, and in parts of Germany, a husband had the right to sell his wife. Even as late as the 20th century, early 20th century, women could neither vote nor hold elective office in Europe and in most of the United States. And so, if you are doing a critical reading of this history, what you have with respect to feminism or egalitarianism was a request by females to not be confined to the house, to be able to have a life outside of the home. There was a request or a demand to be able to own property, to be able to learn or to study, to be able to go to school, to have information, and to participate in public life. Okay, so with respect to France, there might have been a request to not be completely covered. With respect to Germany, and this isn't only Germany because, again, women, females, have been treated as chattel. Chattel is just a fancy word, again, for property. And so, in essence, we are talking about slavery. We can call it something else, but that's, in essence, what it was. And so, in Germany, the husband had the right to sell his wife. You saw some of these dynamics also going on in the Americas. And so this isn't just limited to Germany, and it's not limited to the West. This is a global issue. And so what women and some men were fighting for was for the right for girls, females, women to not be treated as property, to not be enslaved. Additionally, there was the issue about voting. And voting is about representation. And so the issue was about having the right to be represented. And what's interesting, of course, is that if individuals have not been taking history classes or they have not been taking the relevant history classes, they may not be aware of these histories. And so Britannica goes on to indicate even as late as the early 20th century, women could neither vote nor hold elective office in Europe and in most of the United States. It goes on to indicate women were prevented from conducting business without a male representative, be it a father, brother, husband, legal agent, or even a son. And so, in this way, females were treated as non persons. So they were treated as non human, essentially. And so the rights, the human rights, were invested in or vested in those males that were in the lives of the females. And so the females basically had no rights to operate as human beings. Britannica goes on to indicate married women could not exercise control over their own children without the permission of their husbands. Moreover, women had little or no access to education and were barred from most professions. In some parts of the world, such restrictions on women continue today. And so the issue was that the women did not have any rights to the children. You'll often hear people complain about the family court system and how they believe it operates today, and some of that is based upon some fantasy and fallacy. However, historically, and this isn't that far back in history, by the way, historically, let's use the Americas, let's use the United States. Um, Women did not have rights to their children. And so custody typically went to the father because, again, both were considered chattel. And so the woman did not have those rights to her children. She did not have rights over her own body. She did not have rights over her own destiny. So, again, the woman was enslaved and the children were enslaved. Additionally, and this goes along with being enslaved, there was little or no access to education, and many women were barred from most professions. And then some professions, of course, started opening up, things like teaching and nursing, being a maid, things of that sort. And so those sorts of domestic occupations were opening up, those caregiving occupations were opening up. But in some parts of the world, those opportunities are still non existent for females. And so this is in part what feminism is about historically. It is about this right to exercise control over the self, the body, the destiny, exercise control over one's own children, exercising the right to be informed in order to get an education, in order to manifest one's God given gifts. And so that's a large part of what feminism has historically been about. Before we go on to the commentary related to egalitarianism, we're just going to touch on this sentiment that many people have embraced related to fairness and equality. And so some people do not want fairness and equality because they believe that it translates to sort of a flipping the oppression script. And so some people believe that if everyone is treated fairly, then the individuals who were previously treated unfairly, they will eventually become the superiors of the individuals who were previously considered superior. And so this goes right back into that whole dynamic of needing other people to be unhappy or needing other people to suffer in order for some people to feel happiness themselves or to feel content. And so the suffering of others, the injustice of others translates to contentment and happiness for some others. Now we're going to wrap this up with the actual construct that serves as the bedrock of feminism. This is what really is going on. It's not really feminism, it's really a push towards what is known as egalitarianism. And egalitarianism, according to Britannica, is the belief in human equality, okay? Especially political, social, and economic equality, which is what we first started off with talking about feminism. And so, again, it's important to understand what equality is, first of all. What does that mean? What does it mean to be politically equal? What does it mean to be socially equal? What does it mean to be economically equal? It goes on to indicate egalitarianism has been a driving principle in many modern social movements. This includes the Enlightenment, feminism, civil rights, and the establishment of international human rights. What's often interesting about feminism and civil rights is that many individuals who are in favor of, if you will, basic human rights and civil rights might not be in favor of feminism or civil rights or human rights for females. What people are not understanding sometimes is that whatever it is that you are putting out there will come back. And so, if a person's happiness, again, is founded upon injustice, is founded upon the suffering of others, one should not be surprised when that script gets flipped. And so, if an individual does not believe in human rights for others, there's a higher likelihood that that energy that's out there might translate one day to them being treated in a similar manner. You know, it's always one group today, but it may be another group tomorrow. Britannica goes on to indicate, given that there are many ways in which people can relate as equals or be treated the same, egalitarianism as a concept is versatile and sometimes contentious. And so, of course, everyone understands that each person is an individual, and so everyone is not equal, strictly equal. And so finally, egalitarianism, or the other word, feminism. Um, this construct, this reality, is only a problem for individuals who have a problem with individuals being treated fairly, with everyone who is a human being treated as a human, with everyone who is a human being treated with justice. And so if individuals have a problem with that, then they will have a problem with egalitarianism. They will have a problem with feminism. But what individuals need to consider is, why is someone's happiness rooted in someone else's unhappiness? Why would someone's happiness be rooted in someone not being able to have access to things, not being able to be educated, not being able to have control over their own body? Why would someone only be happy when someone else is enslaved?